Hello and welcome to another Doctor Who Big Finish video. In today's Doctor Who Big Finish video, I'll be reviewing this, Iron Bright, the latest Sixth Doctor story, written by Chris Chapman. And Chris Chapman, if you know, he wrote one of my favourite Sixth Doctor stories from last year, my favourite story from the Sixth Doctor trilogy, and one of my favourite stories from the main range last year, which was The Middle. And The Middle I thought was just superb, a great, very futuristic 80s story. The society, what he created, was magical. The whole twist on that and the twist within that story were brilliant. I really did like that, and the darker moments, because it did have some very dark, bleak moments, which I do appreciate, and it just adds to the nitty grittiness and does feel very traditional to the Colin Baker era. So it's quite nice that Chris Chapman did that nice futuristic story, and now we've got him doing sort of a historical story. So we'll get onto that more later on. So it's very nice that he's challenging his writing capabilities from doing this very far out futuristic 80s story to a very historical story in a way. Yeah. Without further ado, let's look at the presentation, then we'll go into my thoughts.
Taking a look at the presentation for Iron Bright, this is the first main range release to feature the Jodie Whittaker logo and not feature the sidebar. So we've got the diamond effect there, we've got the TARDIS, the Sixth Doctor, one of the ghosts, we have a bit of a tunnel effect there, and just about there you can see the Thames tunnel, some water splashing in, and we have the sort of star-filled background there, and we have the new Doctor Who logo there as well, Iron Bright by Chris Chapman, and the spine of the release there. Now if you bought any of the Big Finish vinyls, then you'll kind of know what the back will look like. So we've got a little image there of the cover and what the story's about, so do feel free to pause if you want to know more about the story. Then we have the cast list there, and the total running time being 120 minutes. Inside the leaflet now we have production credits for advertising for Doctor Who magazine, and what is a lovely feature, and it's quite nice to see the return of cast photos. I mean, it's one step closer to having writer's notes, and hopefully one day we'll have concept art back again, because I really did like the concept art. Then we have the next instalment in the main range, Hour of the Cybermen by Andrew Smith, and we have the reversible cover there if you want the Colin Baker era logo. And the disc art, I have to say, I really do like this new sort of disc art, because it's very simple and very stylish, which I quite like, the sort of merge of the cover and this nice vortex effect there, and the disc art is exactly the same for both. So what are my opening thoughts on Iron Bright? So did Chris Chapman deliver another great Sixth Doctor story? Answer, yes. This is a thoroughly enjoyable adventure, this being a tale of two halves, so the first hour being historical and the second being sci-fi. So this story really has everyone covered within it. Part 1, I have to say the introduction for this story just screams classic Who, with us encountering a ghost in the Thames tunnel, which does remind me of Jago and Life at the Flickermen, so that's always good to be reminded of those two. But for the most part, this story really does remind me of the Unquiet Dead, strange blue ghost and the Doctor teaming up with an historical figure in the form of Isambard Kingdom Brunel. So we do have this rather lovely eerie start with us throwing some intriguing questions, who is Elaine and why do puddles glow? So after that we were introduced to the main supporting character in the form of Isambard Kingdom Brunel, with the scene very much reminding me of Mark of the Rani, with this beginning the start of the Doctor and Isambard's friendship. So we also do have some great imagery created within this episode in the form of this dinner party being held under the Thames tunnel. That's one thing I love about the story, is the world Chris Chapman has crafted. So while this luxurious party is happening under the Thames tunnel, the Doctor's busy ghost hunting. So this part of the story is when tension starts to rise. In the last 10 minutes we do get a very exciting cliffhanger, and I just think overall this is a good solid opening episode, and it just feels very authentic to the era. Part 2, so part 1 was very much, set down the foundations for the story, and part 2 is where we're introduced to some of the more action-based stuff, so in the form of the cliffhanger's bold resolution. And I will say this part is very ambitious, so we start to expand on the ghosts, of us starting to get some reasons behind them, and we're introduced to this mysterious woman called Tan, and why does she need the Doctor, and how does she know a servant called Flo? And what I thought was quite funny is we basically get a bit of a parody on the British Empire, in the form of, oh, we found somewhere new, let's claim it as ours. So I found that quite nice. So this part is when the story really becomes more ambitious with the scale, and the story ramps up to another level, with us getting some really lovely character interactions between the Doctor and Isambard, and a rather sinister cliffhanger. Part 3, so like I said in the intro, this story is a tale of two halves. So the second half is when we get some very much the scientific, the sci-fi element brought within the story. So we do move away from the historical setting, and we're introduced to the tribute subplots of the ghosts are finally explained within this story, and explained why they haunt the Thames tunnel, and we expand on the alien society and how that links into London at the start of the Industrial Revolution. And I've got to say, that is a pretty dark moment within the story, and the more that plot thread is explored, the more it puts the Doctor in a great moral dilemma. And it's just a really good cliffhanger for this episode as well, with this part being tense, thrilling, and really ramps up for the final act. Part 4 is very much the action part of the story, as we have humans fighting ghosts, and while that's happening we have the Doctor and Isambard trying to figure a way to stop this invasion, and once they have a plan in motion, the story splits into 3, and we continue to explore the science of this alien world, and we have a rather gripping final 10 minutes which just perfectly round the story off. I'm not going to say too much on episode 4 because I think that's best for you to discover yourself, because it is a cracking episode and it's a great way to close this story. So moving on to characters now, this is another thing I've got to give this release credit for, is the characters. You know, whether the characters have the tiniest role within the story, they feel incredibly well fleshed out, with us getting glimpses of their lives and backstories. I just think that every character is utilised well within the story and just feel incredibly well developed throughout the story. So yeah, that's another thing I love about Chris Chapman, that every character has a moment to shine and just feels incredibly well developed and well rounded as characters. So moving on to the Doctor now, played by Colin Baker. Another excellent performance by Colin, as he's very much a bit of a fanboy with him meeting Isambard Kingdom Brunel. So it's quite nice to see that different side of the Sixth Doctor, of him being very much a fanboy. You know, he's very curious about the world around him. He gets quite agitated easily and frustrated by some of the events that happen in part 1. We do see his scientific side later on in the story, and he does get this very gentleman moment in part 1 as well, and we have some nice witty dialogue within there, and he just have this sort of teacher vibe. And I will say this, he does have an excellent speech in episode 3. Isambard Kingdom Brunel, played by James McCallan. Again, really good performance and an interesting character, because he has some really nice character development throughout the story. As he's very much starts off a bit of a cold character towards the Doctor, but as the story progresses he lightens up as his eyes are opened as he enters the Doctor's world of sort of technological marvels, and he's just a really good character to play off the Doctor. You know, he's concerned that he's very much living in his father's shadow, and he wants to prove himself that he is, you know, capable, and he's just a really nice addition to the story, and I really do like that. I know it's just a real shame that Isambard just didn't go inside the TARDIS and fly off with the Doctor. I think they would make an interesting pairing. I think that would be really nice to see those two go on some more adventures. Tan, played by Catherine Bailey. What a really warm, bubbly character who has some really nice, sweet moments with Florence, with the smallest things exciting her. So like drinking tea, you know, she's just fascinated by Earth culture. I just really did enjoy her character. She was just a really nice, warm addition to the story. And another character I did quite like was Mark Brunel, obviously Isambard's father. You know, this very luxurious, extravagant character. It's very much a showman character, and yeah, brilliantly played. You know, I did enjoy him as the story progresses. He just becomes a lot more of an interesting character. I did enjoy. So
Mark
what are my overall
Brunel
thoughts on Iron Bright? Iron Bright is another brilliant story to add to the Big Finish Sixth Doctor collection, full of interesting ideas which creates some enjoyable listening. Combine that with smog-filled London to a far-out futuristic world. Combining those two worlds together, you create an unlikely combination, but it really works, with it covering every Doctor Who fan's need. And it's just a shame Isambard never joined the Doctor on his travels. I feel like they would make a very interesting team, and I would definitely recommend Iron Bright, as I feel this story has a lot to offer, with this story definitely having the repeatability. I'm sure when you get to sort of re-listening to it, I'm sure more enjoyment will be added to it, because re-listening to this story, I'm sure you're going to pick up on more little details about this story. So I feel like this has a lot of re-listen value, which is always good. So yeah, Iron Bright, I highly recommend. It's a really fun story. You know, I just think that blending, you know, smog-filled London in this very far-out futuristic world, you know, unlikely combination, but you merge those together and it creates this very harmonious story. And I just really did enjoy this adventure. You know, Chris Chapman has delivered another classic Sixth Doctor story. So yeah, I'm going to give this story a 9 out of 10. Brilliant story, brilliant addition to the Sixth Doctor Big Finish catalogue, and definitely one I recommend. It is just a lot of fun, because the characters, like I said, brilliant. The world what Chris Chapman have created, whether it be, you know, inside the Thames Tunnel or the far out futuristic world, everything seems, you know, just pictured beautifully and just written well, and the characters are another highlight within this. So yeah, Iron Bright is a worthy pickup and definitely worth your money. So Iron Bright, 9 out of 10. Well done, Chris Chapman, you've delivered another classic Sixth Doctor adventure. So thank you very much for watching this review, I hope you have enjoyed it, and I'll see you on my next Big Finish review, whatever that will be. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. So thank you very much, and bye bye!